This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Another day of quite compelling testimony from the January 6th committee. Sergeant Mark Robinson testified before the committee that law enforcement was aware of armed individuals everywhere on January 6th.
Yes, I believe we was on Special Events Channel, and I was monitoring the traffic, and so I could hear some of the units pointing out to individuals that there were individuals along Constitution Avenue that were armed, that were up in the trees, and I can hear the units responding to those individuals. And so there's always a concern when there's a police in the area.
And like other witnesses, Sergeant Robinson told us that the president still wanted to travel to the Capitol, even after returning to the White House.
So at the end of the speech, what was the plan supposed to be?
So at the end of the speech, we do know that while inside the limo, the president was still adamant about going to the Capitol. That's being relayed to me by the TS agent. And so we did part the ellipse and we responded back to the White House. However, the motorcade, the protest motorcade was placed on standby. And so we were told to stand by on West Exec until they confirmed whether or not the president was going to go to the Capitol. And so I may have waited, I would just estimate maybe 45 minutes to an hour, waiting for Secret Service to make that decision.
Sergeant Mark Robinson of the Metropolitan Police Department talking about what actually happened with the motorcade, with law enforcement, and with armed individuals throughout the area January 6th. Congresswoman Elaine Luria of Virginia.
The committee is also aware that certain Secret Service witnesses have now retained new private counsel. We anticipate further testimony under oath and other new information in the coming weeks.
Why are Secret Service agents retaining private counsel if everything's good, if nothing's going on? When has that ever happened in the history of this country? Now, what was Trump doing? What was he spending his time doing January 6th?
We know from the employee that TV was tuned to Fox News all afternoon. Here you can see Fox News on the TV showing coverage of the joint session that was airing that day at 1:25. Other witnesses confirmed that President Trump was in the dining room with the TV on for more than 2.5 hours. There was no official record of what President Trump did while in the dining room. On the screen is the presidential call log from January 6th. As you can see, there's no official record of President Trump receiving or placing a call between 11:06 and 6:54 p.m. As to what the president was doing that afternoon, the presidential daily diary is also silent. It contains no information from the period between 1:21 p.m. and 4:03 p.m. There are also no photos of President Trump during this critical period between 1:21 in the Oval Office and when he went outside to the Rose Garden after 4 o'clock.
Nothing. Nothing happening at all. Not lifting a finger, not doing anything to discourage what is taking place on Capitol Hill.
So are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Pat Cipollone.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States that day?
No.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Homeland Security that day?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Did you ever hear the President
No.
ask for the National
No.
Guard? Did you ever hear the President ask for law enforcement response?
No.
Now, that was General Kellogg, former National Security Advisor to the Vice President.
So as somebody who worked in the national security space and with the National Security Council, if there were going to be troops present or called up for a rally in Washington, D.C., for example, is that something that you would have been aware of?
Yeah, I would have.
Do you know if you asked anybody to reach out to any of those that we just listed off? National Guard, DOD, FBI, Homeland Security, Secret Service, Mayor Bowser, the Capitol Police about the situation in the Capitol?
Nicholas Luna, former assistant to the president.
I am not aware of any of those requests. No, sir.
We have confirmed in numerous interviews with senior law enforcement and military leaders, Vice President Pence's staff and D.C. government officials. None of them, not one, heard from President Trump that day.
No one heard from President Trump while all of this was taking place. Also heard from Press Officer Kayleigh McEnany.
So if President Trump wasn't calling law enforcement or military leaders, what did President Trump spend his time doing that afternoon while he first settled into the dining room? He was calling senators to encourage them to delay or object to the certification. Here's Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary, to explain.
Yeah. All right, then it says back there, and he wants list of senators. And then he's calling them one by one. Do you know which ones he called?
To the best of my recollection, no. As I say in my notes, he wanted a list of the senators, and I left him at that point.
Because the presidential call log is empty, we do not yet know precisely which senators President Trump was calling.
Meanwhile, in the midst of all this, and Trump's watching this on TV, he actually is tweeting out again the speech that he gave at the Ellipse where he incited the mob.
At 1:49, here's what was happening at the Capitol with President Trump's fired up supporters.
We're going to give riot warning. We're going to try and get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
49 hours declaring it a riot.
What did President Trump do at 1:49 as the DC police at the same time were declaring a riot at the Capitol? As you can see on the screen, he tweeted out a link to the recording of his Ellipse speech. This was the same speech in which he knowingly sent an armed mob to the Capitol. But President Trump made no comment about the lawlessness and the violence.
None at all. He's just encouraging this behavior, fomenting it, pushing it out even further. The counsel, Cipollone, talked about how he and others tried to get him to make a statement.
An immediate and forceful response statement, public statement that people need to leave the Capitol now.
My question is exactly that. That it sounds like you, from the very onset of violence at the Capitol, right around 2 o'clock, were pushing for a strong statement that people should leave the Capitol. Is that right?
I was, and others were as well. Okay.
Pat, you said that you expressed your opinion forcefully. Could you tell us exactly how you did that?
Yeah, I can't. Don't have. I have to. On the privilege issue, I can't talk about conversations with the president, but I can generically say that I said, people need to be told. There needs to be a public announcement fast that they need to leave the Capitol.
And Pat, could you let us know approximately when you said that?
Approximately when? Almost immediately after I found out people were getting into the Capitol or approaching the Capitol in a way that was violent.
Do you remember any discussion with Mark Meadows with respect to his view that the president didn't want to do anything, was somehow resistant to wanting to say something along the lines that you suggest?
And it's not just to be clear, many people suggested it. Not just me. Many people felt the same way. I'm sure I had conversations with Mark about this during the course of the day and expressed my opinion very forcefully that this needs to be done.
So your advice was tell people to leave the Capitol, and it took over 2 hours when there were subsequent statements made, tweets put forth that in your view were insufficient. Did you continue, Mr. Cipollone, throughout the period of time up until 4/17, continue, you and others, to push for a stronger statement?
Yes.
Were you joined in that effort by Ivanka Trump?
Yes.
Eric Hershey?
Yes.
By Mark Meadows?
Yes.
He was joined by all these people calling for a more forceful statement from Trump to end the insurrection. The committee also shared more of Cassidy Hutchinson's previously recorded testimony about a conversation between Pat Cipollone, whom we just heard from, and Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff.
Until Mark hung up the phone, handed it back to me. I went back to my desk. A couple minutes later, him and Pat came back, possibly Eric Hirschman too. I'm pretty sure Eric Hirschman was there. But I'm confident it was Pat that was there. I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. To which Pat said something, this is effing crazy. We need to be doing something more. Briefly stepped into Mark's office.
This is crazy. All of this is effing crazy. The President of the United States saying that he believes that Mike Pence is getting what he deserves. Not on the phone with any officials. Not on the trying to stop this. But he was on the phone with you-know-who, Rudy Giuliani.
Although President Trump was aware of the ongoing riot, he did not take any immediate action to address the lawlessness. Instead, at 2:03, he called Rudy Giuliani again, and that call lasted for over 8 minutes. Moments later, at 2:13, rioters broke into the Capitol itself. One of the Proud Boys charged with seditious conspiracy, Dominic Pizzola, used an officer's shield to smash a window, and rioters flooded into the building.
Black people would have been shot. Here's also some of the radio traffic from the Secret Service that day.
Building, hold. Turn that door up. If we're moving, we need to move now.
Copy.
If we lose any more time, we may lose the ability to leave. So if we're going to leave, we need to do it now.
Now, these were Secret Service agents also in and around the vice president. So when you hear them saying, if we don't move now, if we don't leave now, we may lose the ability to leave. These are those who were surrounding and protecting the vice president himself.
I've gained access to the second floor, and I've got public about 5 feet from me down here below.
Okay, copy. They are on the second floor, moving in now. We may want to consider getting out and leaving now. Copy.
Will we encounter the people once we make our way?
Repeat.
Counter any individuals if we made our way to the.
There's 6 officers between us and the people that are 5 to 10 feet away from me.
Stand by. I'm going down to evaluate.
Go ahead.
We have a clear shot if we move quickly. We got smoke downstairs set by unknown smoke set downstairs by the protesters.
Is that route compromised?
We have this insecure. However, we will bypass some protesters that are being contained. There is smoke, unknown what kind of smoke it is. Copy. Clear.
This is what the Secret Service was dealing with on January 6th, trying to protect themselves and protect Vice President Cheney. I'm sorry, Freudian slip. It's Liz Cheney, Vice President Pence. It is interesting, though, isn't it, watching Liz Cheney prosecute. She has all of her father's mannerisms. Watching her prosecute Donald Trump. Some of the most compelling testimony came from an official with their voice concealed. And, you know, there are moments in these hearings, I'm sure you all have witnessed this, everyone listening has witnessed this, where there's some things that just stand out. And those things, those events in the hearings and the testimony become the topic of conversation. Those are the ones you get phone calls about. And what we're about to hear is when my phone and my text messages blew up last night from this particular piece of evidence.
Secret Service agents did not, quote, sound good right now. In the following clip of that testimony, which has been modified to protect the individual's identity, the professional discusses what they heard from listening to the incoming radio traffic that day.
Okay, that last entry in this page is service to the Capitol does not sound good right now.
Correct.
What does that mean?
The members of the VP detail at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of very personal calls over the radio. So it was disturbing. I don't like talking about it, but there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly.
And did you hear that over the radio? Okay. What was the response by the agents, Secret Service agents who were there?
Everybody kept saying, you know, at that point it was just reassurances, or I think there were discussions of reinforcements coming, but again, it was just chaos. They were just yelling.
Obviously, you conveyed the disturbing, but what prompted you to put it into an entry, as it states there, service to the Capitol?
If they're running out of options and they're getting nervous, it sounds like that we came very close to either service having to use lethal options or worse. Like at that point, I don't know. Is the VP compromised? Is the detail I don't know. Like, we didn't have visibility, but it doesn't. If they're screaming and saying things like say goodbye to the family, like, the floor needs to know this is going to a whole nother level soon.
Horrifying. The Secret Service is calling family members to say goodbye. And, you know, they had to be hella awkward because the Secret Service is supposed to be prepared to give its life for the president or the vice president. But now you're talking about Secret Service agents possibly giving their lives because of the president. The president is encouraging people to attack the vice president. He even tweeted during the whole attack against Mike Pence, calling him a traitor and all of that. He even tweeted about it.
Did people appear angry as you were walking to the Capitol?
Yeah, a lot of people seem like they're very upset.
Tell us some of the things they were saying, if you recall.
Oh, they were saying all types. You know, people were screaming all types of stuff. They were mad that Vice President Pence was going to accept the electorals. I mean, it I mean, it was a little. If you could think it up, you were hearing it.
This is Stephen Ayers, folks, who we heard testify just last week, who was one of the protesters.
Believed that Vice President Pence was going to certify the electoral votes or not certify them, but I guess that's just changed, correct? And it's a very big disappointment. I think there's several 100,000 people here that are very disappointed.
President Trump did not try to calm his thousands of disappointed supporters. Instead, at almost the same moment violence was getting completely out of hand, Donald Trump sent his 224 tweet. The president said, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. Despite knowing the Capitol had been breached and the mob was in the building, President Trump called Mike Pence a coward and placed all the blame on him for not stopping the certification. He put a target on his own vice president's back.
Certainly did. And hence the Secret Service having the reaction they had. The word now is that Mike Pence himself may run for president against Donald Trump. And that, who would be, I mean, come on. Pat Cipollone on Trump's tweet attacking Pence.
I don't remember when exactly I heard about that tweet, but my reaction to it is that's a terrible tweet, and I disagreed with the sentiment, and I thought it was wrong.
What was your reaction when you saw that tweet?
Extremely unhelpful.
Why?
Judd Deere, Deputy Press Secretary.
It wasn't the message that we needed at that time. It wasn't going to. The scenes at the U.S. Capitol were only getting worse at that point. This was not going to help that.
Were you concerned it could make it worse?
Certainly.
Trump's tweet, people reacting to the tweet that Trump sent. Now, one of the other things that I'll share, another viral moment in the hearing, this 8th hearing, and here, you remember Josh Hawley pumped his fist in front of the insurrectionists, and then the video was released of him running to safety within the Capitol.
Senator Josh Hawley also had to flee. Earlier that afternoon, before the joint session started, he walked across the east front of the Capitol. As you can see in this photo, he raised his fist in solidarity with the protesters already amassing at the security gates. We spoke with a Capitol police officer who was out there at the time. She told us that Senator Hawley's gesture riled up the crowd, and it bothered her greatly because he was doing it in a safe space, protected by the officers and the barriers. Later that day, Senator Hawley fled after those protesters he helped to rile up stormed the Capitol. See for yourself.
And the committee has shown the video of Josh Hawley running through the Capitol, running for safety within the Capitol himself. As she said, as Elaine Luria, Congresswoman Luria just said, after already himself riling up the people. Now, here the immediate reaction the audience in the hearing room had when they saw the video of Hawley running. Absolute ridicule. And that's not going to subside. It's been turned into a meme, put to music 1,000 times on social media. You can see it for yourselves. Josh Hawley running. We'll be talking about that for weeks to come. Jared Kushner, some of his testimony also was shared at the hearing.
Do you believe, Jared, that the president has an obligation to ensure a peaceful transfer of power?
Yes.
And do you think the president has an obligation to defend all three branches of our government?
I believe so.
And
Now, that is the son-in-law of Donald Trump, Ivanka's husband. Countless texts were also revealed. Donald Jr., Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, all of them urging Trump to, or urging Meadows to get Trump to condemn what was going on.
To appreciate how obvious it was that President Trump was not meeting this moment, it's helpful to look at the real-time reactions of his own son, Don Jr., to the first tweet, captured in a series of text messages with Mark Meadows. I'll warn the audience that these messages contain some strong language. As you can see, Don Jr. first texted Mr. Meadows at 2:53. He wrote, "He's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough." Mr. Meadows replied, "I am pushing it hard. I agree." Don Jr. responded, "This is one you go to the mattresses on. They will try to fuck his entire legacy if it gets worse." Here's what Don Jr. told us he meant by go to the mattresses.
At 2:58, when you say that that Mr. Meadows needs to go to the mattresses on this issue, when you say go to the mattresses, what does that mean?
It's just a reference for going all in. I think it's a Godfather reference.
This, again, make-believe, we're the mafia. But you get the point. That's what he was saying needed to be
Sean
done.
Hannity agreed, and he also turned to Mark Meadows for help after the president's second tweet. As you can see, Mr. Hannity texted at 3:31 to say Trump needed to deliver a statement to the nation telling the rioters to leave the Capitol. Mr. Meadows responded that he was, quote, on it. Don Jr. and Sean Hannity were not the only ones who implored Mr. Meadows to get the president to speak to the nation and tell the mob to leave, to go home. Go home. Throughout the attack, Mr. Meadows received texts from Republican members of Congress, from current and former Trump administration officials, from media personalities, and from friends. Like President Trump's staff, they knew President Trump had to speak publicly to get the mob to stop. Let's look at just a few of these text messages. Fox News personality Laura Ingraham said, "The president needs to tell the people in the Capitol to go home." Former Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney urged Mark, he needs to stop this now. Fox News personality Brian Kilmeade said, "Please get him on TV, destroying everything that you guys have accomplished." When we interviewed White House counsel Pat Cipollone, he told us that he knew the president's two tweets were not enough. Let's listen to what he said.
I think the question is, did you believe that the tweets were not anything about your advice to the president?
No, I believe more needed to be done. Okay. I believed that a public statement needed to be made.
That is the White House counsel saying that more needed to be done. Meadows isn't doing anything. He's the chief of staff. But that's the White House counsel even saying that more needed to be done.
Who on the staff did not want people to leave the Capitol?
On the staff?
In the White House, how about?
I can't think of anybody, on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol particularly once the violence started. No. I mean,
what about the president?
Yeah.
She said the staff. So I answered.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff. I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think, yeah.
Dead air. That's what you call that. He had a hard time when asked about Trump. And whether or not Trump wanted people to leave. But because we knew that we already know that Trump didn't want anyone to leave. Then there was the issue with Kevin McCarthy. Apparently he called Trump as well. Molly Michael was a former executive assistant to the president.
McCarthy placed a phone call to Mr. Scavino's desk line, and it was transferred to the president. Is that correct?
That's generally what I recall.
Okay. Were you involved in transferring that call?
Correction, it's Molly Michael, former assistant to the president.
Yes.
Okay. Where was the president at the time that he took that call?
He was in the dining room.
Would you personally reach out to the president for more support?
I've already talked to the president. I called him. I think we need to make a statement, make sure that we can calm individuals down.
Did Mr. McCarthy indicate that he had been in touch with President Trump?
He indicated that he had had some conversation. I don't recall whether it was with the president or with somebody at the White House. But
this is Mark Short, formerly of the vice president's staff.
I think he expressed frustration that not taking the circumstance as seriously as they should in that moment.
I asked Kevin McCarthy, who's the Republican leader, about this, and he said he called Donald. He finally got through to Donald Trump, and he said, "You have got to get on TV. You've got to get on Twitter. You've got to call these people off." You know what the president said to him? This is as it's happening. He said, "Well, Kevin, these aren't my people. These are Antifa." And Kevin responded and said, "No, they're your people. They literally just came through my office windows, and my staff are running for cover. I mean, they're running for their lives. You need to call them off."
This is Congresswoman Jamie Herrera, a Republican congresswoman.
And the president's response to Kevin, to me, was chilling. He said, "Well, Kevin, I guess they're just more upset about the election, theft than you are." And that's, you've seen widespread reports of Kevin McCarthy and the president having basically a swearing conversation. That's when the swearing commenced, because the president was basically saying, I'm okay with this.
Leader McCarthy.
That was Kevin McCarthy. Jared, there was also testimony shared, believe it or not, where Jared Kushner was speaking about House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
I heard my phone ringing, turned the shower off, saw it was Leader McCarthy, who I had a good relationship with. He told me he was getting really ugly over at the Capitol and said, "Please, anything you could do to help, I would appreciate it." I don't recall specific asks, just anything you could do. Again, I got the sense that, they were scared.
They meaning Leader McCarthy and people on the Hill because of the violence?
That he was scared, yes.
Think about that. Leader McCarthy, who was one of the president's strongest supporters, was scared and begging for help. President Trump turned him down.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who's also led much of the hearing, the latest hearing, this 8th hearing that the January 6th committee has held. Also, other members of Congress were in the Capitol, including all the leadership, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. They were in a safe location, never before seen evidence of what their conversations were in that safe location.
For instance, here are never before seen photos and video of congressional leaders in action during the attack. The video is a portion of a call they had at approximately 4:45 with Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller.
We're not going to let these people keep us from finishing our business. So we need you
That's
to
Mitch.
get the building cleared, give us the okay so we can go back in session and finish up the people's business as soon as possible.
Mr. Secretary, it's Senator Schumer. Some people here in the Capitol Police believe it would take us several days to secure the building. Do you agree with that analysis?
I'm not on the ground, but I do not agree with that analysis.
So what is the earliest that we could safely resume our proceedings in the Senate and House chambers? The earliest we could safely resume?
Here's my assessment, but I prefer to be on the ground, which I personally would prefer to be right now, but I need to be here. I would say in this case, we're looking at 4 to 5 hours.
That is, you heard Senator Schumer, you heard Senator McConnell speaking with Acting Secretary of Defense Miller, and just how in jeopardy they were in, how much in jeopardy democracy was in America. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Milley on what Chief of Staff Meadows told, Trump's Chief of Staff Meadows told him.
Now, there was a couple of the calls where, Meadows and or Pompeo, but more Meadows, how's the president doing? Like Pompeo might say, how's the president doing? And Meadows would say, well, he's in a really dark place. Like here's one, for example, on the 7th of January. So this is day after, right? POTUS is very emotional and in a bad place. Meadows.
That's what Meadows is saying to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Now, video also was released of Trump trying to film. We get the outtakes, folks. The outtakes, the stuff they show at the end of the movies. The bloopers. Trump first, January 6th, when he filmed the video, we love you, but it's time to go home, all of that. So, but here is what he was trying. This is him trying to film it. And even this was difficult. This was the January 6th, the day of. Wait till you hear the day after. But first, the day of.
Good, Chase? When you're ready, sir. Yep, you'll be right behind me.
You tell me when?
When you're ready, sir.
Who's behind me?
Okay. He's gone around. Clear. We're all clear now.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had a election. Let me see. I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Now, he is clearly was unable to call for peace without also still pushing this line of this was stolen, And all, so it's doublespeak. What did our indigenous ancestors say? White man speak with forked tongue. That was an example of forked tongue. Same thing, same problem, January 7th.
Ready, sir.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack yesterday, and to those who broke the law, you will pay. You do not represent our movement, you do not represent our country, and if you broke the law, you can't say that. I'm not gonna, I already said you will pay. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defied the seat of justice. It's defiled, right? See, I can't see it very well. Okay, I'll do this. I'm going to do this. Let's go. But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
But Congress is certified. Now Congress is
Yeah, right.
Now Congress
I didn't say over, so let me see.
That's Ivanka, y'all. It's Ivanka's
go to
voice.
the paragraph before. Okay? I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack yesterday. Yesterday is a hard word for me.
Just take it out. The heinous attack.
Good. Take the word yesterday, because it doesn't work with the heinous attack on our country. Say on our country. Want to say that?
No.
My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote.
And he bangs on the platform. Struggling. The hearing ended, this 8th hearing ended with an announcement that there will be more in September. The closer we get to the midterms, there's going to be more. It's up to us to think about what impact this will have on the midterms, what impact this will have on the election. What is another question, of course, that looms? What is Merrick Garland going to do? What is he going to do in terms of prosecution? Shouldn't he consider prosecution? That's what more and more people are calling for, even people who at first would not call on any prosecution when it comes to these matters. But this evidence has been, and obviously from the outtakes, we can tell there are even more people than we know in Trump's own administration cooperating with the January 6th committee. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.